In the wake of Brian Wilson's passing, longtime friend and former Beach Boys manager Fred Vail is opening up about the creative genius he knew for over half a century. Their story began in 1963 when a young Vail crossed paths with the surf rock pioneers. What started as a business relationship quickly grew into something deeper. Vail would go on to promote their concerts, then manage the band. But more importantly, he shared in some of their most unexpected musical moments. One such moment came in 1970 when Brian Wilson turned to Vail with a wild idea. "Fred," he said, "I want to make a country album." The inspiration? A long-running inside joke. Every time Vail picked the boys up from the airport, his car stereo would be blasting country radio, something the California rockers didn't exactly appreciate. They'd switch it to rock, he'd switch it back. Eventually, it became a running gag, and then, somehow, a spark of real musical curiosity. Soon, they were in the studio working on what fans would later nickname Cows in the Pasture, a batch of country tracks produced by Wilson and sung by Vail. But like many Brian Wilson ideas, the project was left unfinished, shelved as his attention turned elsewhere. That could have been the end of the story, until decades later, when producer Sam Parker asked Vail if any of those old recordings still existed. To his surprise, Vail still had the tapes. And now, all these years later, they're bringing the music back to life, with plans to release songs next year, along with a full-length documentary chronicling the story behind them. But the project now takes on a new meaning, a tribute to Brian Wilson, who passed away on June 11th at the age of 82. Vail last saw his friend in December. By then, it was clear. Dementia and Alzheimer's had begun to cloud the brilliance that once lit up studio rooms and stages around the world. Still, the legacy remains. To the baby boomers, Vail reflects, Brian Wilson is our Mozart, our Bach, our Beethoven. As a songwriter, a vocalist, a fearless musical architect, every hour of every day, someone, somewhere in the world, is listening to his music. For Fred, the project has become something far greater than he ever imagined. "Back then, we were just having fun," he recalls. "I was this guy from Nashville who somehow ended up in the middle of California surf culture. And Brian, well, he was already a legend, even if he didn't act like one." What started as a running joke about country music evolved into a time capsule, one that, decades later, holds echoes of a friendship frozen in warm analog hiss. In the studio, Brian wasn't the mythic figure history would eventually paint. He was just a friend, a bandmate, a man chasing ideas through sound. He would laugh at the corniest lines in country songs, Vail said, smiling. But he also admired the honesty of them. "I think that's what drew him in. Country songs don't hide behind metaphors. They're raw, they're personal." And Brian, he was always searching for truth in his own way. Fred vividly remembers how Brian would experiment late into the night, not for commercial gain, but out of sheer fascination. He'd try pedal steel overlays, play with odd vocal phrasing, run tape backwards just to see how it felt emotionally, Fred said. There was no deadline, no budget stress, just curiosity. And that kind of freedom? It's rare in this business. The rediscovery of these recordings and the aftermath of Brian's passing has taken on a healing quality. It feels like I'm hearing his voice again, not just in a song, but in the way he produced, in the choices he made, Fred shared. "I'll be listening and suddenly think, there you are, Brian. I see what you were doing there." It's like he's still communicating through the sound. Working with Sam Parker to release these long-lost tracks has also connected generations. Sam didn't grow up with Brian like I did, but he feels the gravity of it all, Fred said. He respects the legacy. We both know we're not just putting out old tapes. We're unearthing a part of music history that very few people ever got to hear. Plans for the documentary have expanded beyond the music. Interviews, archival footage, candid behind-the-scenes stories. All of it will serve not just to entertain, but to preserve the spirit of a man who gave so much and asked so little. We want people to see the Brian I knew, Fred said. Not just the genius, not just the beach boy, but the man who could sit in a car, roll his eyes at my country singing, and then later say, "Let's make a record out of that." And even now, all these years later, Vail says there are still days when he forgets that Brian is gone. I'll catch myself thinking, I need to call him, tell him we found that alternate take from the third session. Then it hits me, he said quietly. But somehow he still feels close. Maybe it's the music. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's both. Fred doesn't know what kind of reception the album will receive. And honestly, he doesn't care. It's not about sales or streams, he said. It's about legacy. It's about finishing something we started together. And more than that, it's about saying goodbye in the only way we know how. In the end, Fred Vail isn't simply sharing old studio sessions. He's opening a window into a deeply personal chapter of music history. What started as a lighthearted joke between friends, with country music humming in the background of airport pickups, transformed into a rare collaboration that now feels more like a time capsule than a record. With Brian Wilson's passing, those unreleased tracks take on a powerful new meaning. They aren't just quirky side projects. They're living echoes of a genius who was still curious, still experimenting, still finding joy in the unexpected. For Vail, this isn't about nostalgia. It's about honoring the soul of someone who gave the world so much beauty, often while battling private darkness. And now, decades later, that beauty has another chance to shine. When Cows in the Pasture finally reaches the public, it won't just be music that fans hear. It will be a tribute, a memory, and the final voice of a man whose harmonies continue to ripple through time.